discuss a lot of brands here on the channel, but very few brands have hurt my mind or my back more than the brand Jonsbo. For me, still the name in DIY NAS cases. There are alternatives in the market, of course, Fractal, Node, Silverstone, of course, but when it comes to Jonsbo, although they make gaming cases and stuff like that, they have only ever released 6, at this point, up until now at least 5, but 6 NAS enclosures, and each one of them has been an absolute banger. The reason being that every single one of them is deployed and kind of designed around a different use case, and this brand new one, the N6, that's recently been revealed at the first half of November 2025, and I think is going to land with us for availability at the end of Q4, is for me not the most impressive device, but I will say it's the one, at least on paper, that looks like it's the one they've been listening to their critics the most. Now, the N6 is a 9-bay solution. 9? Is everything okay at home, Jonsbo? You heard me right, 9 bays of 2.5 or 3.5 inch SATA media. Now, before we go any further, I've got great news. They're using trays. It's 2025. Finally, they're using trays. Many of you will know that although I've said a lot of nice things about Jonsbo over the years, the trays that they include, and I'm using the word trays very, very loosely, are horrible. Those horrible pull, slightly rubbery things. Now they're going for actual sodding bloody trays. Each of these trays, by the way, feeds into a combined SAS SATA connector there internally. And that feeds onto a pre-designated and pre-installed backplane on the other side. Unfortunately, is individual SATA connectors. There's no use of mini SAS here for the fan out cables. This is directly into one SATA each, and there's 2 SATA power Molex, 2 Molex power and 2 SATA power there. Overall, the design of the thing is very, very familiar. It seems like a more supersized Jonsbo N3, although it does support MATX and ITX boards. So again, a decent amount of space to play with there. Impressively though, and scale-wise, it's 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. 30 centimeters square, in fact. By the way, the rest of the measurements in this video are going to be in millimeters. But a quick aside, do you remember these guys? This is the ZimaCube. The ZimaCube is a NAS that I've talked about before on the channel. In one of my earlier reviews of this, I discussed the chassis design there. Seemed like it had looked at the homework of Jonsbo. It had looked at the design of a Jonsbo, and it had seen between the N2 and the N3 a very similar framework to use in terms of profiling. The reason I bring them up is I'm going to prophesize right now, if a ZimaCube 2 comes out, I bet you it uses the same chassis design as the one we're talking about today. But back to the Jonsbo N3. The enclosure is 1mm thick steel all the way around. In terms of cooling, the system arrives with 2 120mm fans on the rear included with it, but you don't have to utilise both of them. We'll get onto that in just a moment. But alongside that, there is placement for another 7 fans, each at 120mm, and again, you're going to have to make sure you've got a motherboard to connect all those in. Now, interestingly, alongside an absolute myriad of passive ventilation, frankly, on every single side, even the base, they've added a small ventilating spot at the bottom with a 6mm height differential with the rubberized feet. The really interesting thing is the PSU implementation. Now, previous Jonsbos, with the exception of the most recent one, always seem to use SFX PSUs. This supports both, get ready for it, both ATX and SFX PSUs. Looking at my notes, the ATX can go up to a maximum 220mm height, and SFX can go up to a maximum 100mm height. Now, why am I getting my knickers in a twist about this? Well, twofold. Number one, if you utilise an SFX, the SFX PSU actually takes up the space by one of those 2 fans on the rear I mentioned earlier on. You can have a fan and the PSU with its own active cooling fan, and that's where that ventilation is on the base there. If you go with an ATX PSU, it's actually a completely different location, located at the top just behind the Mobo. But crucially, you can have both. This allows you to have 2 PSUs. Now, a lot of you are like, are you insane? Have you seen how much electricity costs these days? And you're right, but this is going to allow for much more aggressive and indeed dedicated PSUs to be used towards other elements of the system, whether it is minor ones that are going to be providing power to the individual storage media, or you're going to be supplying them to beefy and very aggressive PCIe GPU cards that are inside. There's 4 PCIe slots, by the way, 4 PCIe cards inside there, and these PCIe slots can go up to a maximum length of 320 millimeter, and that's full height, by the way, there as well. Ultimately, this has got some variations in its architecture I've not seen before. CPU core can go up to 160 millimeters in height there, and ultimately this feels like somewhere between the Jonsbo N3 and the Jonsbo N5, but not the egregious scaling, for that matter, that the N5 had. This is a much more compact, desirable option, albeit with 9 bays. And let's not bury the lead. The fact that we're going to be able to use those bigger MATX motherboards is also going to be pretty bloody well appealing as well in this chassis. Ultimately, the Jonsbo N6, although it doesn't have an official price tag at the moment, it's probably going to retail somewhere between $100 and $150. They tend to at that scale and at this point. But again, TBC through the wazoo. Bottom line, when the N6 is available, of course we're going to try and get one here for the channel. Of course we're going to do a build on this. But does this sound like the NAS case for you? Does this give you more or less than the N3, the N4 or the N5 offered you? Is there something about this that's desirable to you? Can you tell me why you'd use 2 PSUs? That's what the comments are for. Thank you so much for watching. I've added links in the description to different Jonsbo cases, so if you do want to support what we do and you were going to buy a Jonsbo anyway, if those 2 things are true, please use those links, as we get a small commission on anything that is purchased from those links. It allows you to passively support creators like me and Eddie. It's just us doing this. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.